I want to make a video here discussing why the power steering makes noise when you're driving. Sometimes that noise from the power steering will sound like a rear differential noise, but you're going to notice when you step off the accelerator and as the vehicle coasts down the road, the noise goes away, but the miles per hour stays approximately the same, or it will fall off every second. That's a sign to tell you that the noise, the winding noise, is not coming from the rear end, which most technician, mechanic, or owners will have the tendency to think that when you step on the gas, the pinion gear is meshed with the ring gear, causing this noise at the rear end. But the noise is really not coming from the rear end. The noise is coming from this power steering pump. So eventually you will have to do an inspection on the rear end. You will find that the oil is good. There is no Mallory or metal worn out in the differential. And you're going to put it back together with new oil. You're going to continue driving and you're going to still get that noise. So you could get rid of that noise by changing the fluid on the power steering system. That's the power steering reservoir, emptying all the oil and refilling it with new oil that is recommended from the dealer or the manufacturer. So when you do that, you're going to find that the noise comes back because the oil, the viscosity of the oil, has lost its ability to maintain its consistency and lubrication property because the power steering oil will get hot. Now you could put a cooler, an oil cooler on the power steering plumbing so it could keep the oil cool, and this will help suppressing the noise that's coming from the power steering. Eventually you're going to have to take the power steering pump, which is this, you're going to have to take it off. So you're going to have these two bolt holes right here, which holds the power steering in position. And then you have the pressure regulator valve right here, which you might want to take apart, unscrew it, clean the inside in case there's any contaminant or block passageway. In the process of doing so, you're going to have to remove the pulley from that spline shaft, and when you do so, you have to take a careful inspection to make sure you're not getting any oil leak in this area here. So this is a seal bearing, and there is an oil seal behind this bearing. This shaft has to come out from the front. So when you get this C-clip out of its location, you're going to be able to take a rubber mallet and just tap it on the shaft right here slowly, and what it's going to do, it's going to walk the bearing out. This is a seal bearing, so you're going to have to replace it with a new one. If it's damaged, once you remove it, you're going to take an inspection of it, making sure it's not grinding when you're spinning the outer race that's out here versus the inner race. In here is the ball bearing covered with this seal, which can easily be popped out, but you don't want to do all of that. It's better to just replace the bearing, and that will make sure this shaft stays sturdy in its position. Now when you take this apart, you got 4 bolts on the back, one here, one here. It's the 4 bolts, and you can see in there you have a hole on the side with a little plunger. That's the pressure regulator valve. As the fluid push against it, it's going to pop up, allowing the pressure oil to flow in the plumbing. So there's a spring in here with a ball, and the spring is rated at the factory for the pressure that is required to operate the system. Now when you take this thing apart, this is the vane pump. You want to make sure you take the back cover off, and you're going to have this here and here. So you're going to want to get a rubber band around this before you take it off the shaft. You don't want these vanes to fall out of their location. You want to keep them in the same position, in the same location, so they could maintain sealing property when in rotation. Now, most of the time you're going to get that noise because there's going to be a rubber O-ring right here, a small one, and you're going to have a large one on the outside. So this is the inner, obviously, and this is the outer. What these two O-ring does, it prevents the oil from exchanging passageway from the high pressure chamber to the pump cavity. Most of the time, the rubber O-ring will become shrink or lose its tendency to mate against the surface that it's required to seal, and the oil will exchange from the high pressure back into the pump. And this is what will cause the noise for the power steering most of the time. Also, when you remove this gasket from here and this rotor cover, you're going to need to pass your hand right here, your fingers. You need to move it like this. And it needs to be absolutely smooth. You do not need to have any kind of gouges or rough friction, wear and tear in this area. If that is to be the case, you will have to remove these two pins. It's easy to pop out like this. And you will take the sandpaper, preferably maybe 220, a very fine sandpaper, because remember, you don't want to leave any scratches in the aluminum surface. You will place that sandpaper on a flat surface, perfectly flat surface, preferably a granite countertop or maybe a porcelain tile. And then you will turn this over onto the sandpaper and you will just move it back and forth like this until this surface here could be absolutely smooth with no gouges like you see in the middle here. You could see right here traces of wear and tear. So you want to get rid of that wear and tear. So you're going to pass this on the sandpaper when it's on a flat, absolutely flat surface, bringing this surface back to perfection. This will allow this back plate to mate perfectly against the rotor fin and prevent loss of pressure. Anytime you buy a new or rebuilt power steering pump, most of the time what is going to happen is the rebuilder is going to do exactly what I just showed you. And they're also going to replace it with a new gasket. You can see this is a rubber impregnated gasket. It's reusable, but I will assume that you get a new one in the event you want the power steering pump to last for 100,000 miles. So you can see when I removed this, a couple of the fins fell out from here because the rubber band wasn't able to hold it perfectly in position. So when you replace those two O-ring, one is going to go around in this area here, like I said before, and the other one is going to fit on the outside. You're going to replace this plate. This is the front plate for the rotor and the hub. Now when you replace this plate, you're going to see that you have this cavity right here. You have to move this so it lines with this pinhole right here, because this pin is what's going to seat in here to prevent this front housing from spinning, and that goes for both sides. So you get the idea. Once that is replaced, you're then gonna place this rotor back in position with all the fin in location. When replacing these fin, you take a close look at it on this side and the reverse side, the other side. You will notice it's the same, and it has a curved edge. So the curved edge is what you want to keep on the outside, and if it has a flat edge, you want it to be on the inside of the rotor. So you will pick this up, place it onto the spline shaft, and you're going to place it up like this, upright, so it's like that. Then you're going to need to get this onto this housing, and what you want to do is you want to make sure this dot that you see on the top remains on top like that, and the end like here stay here. So when you remove the rubber band, as you can see, then you will want to place this outer ring in location, and not forgetting to align these two for the pin to fall in for holding the whole assembly fixed in position. So this pin will have to first be fit into here. Now you're going to have a little play with this because it's going to have a little spring action to it because it's very tightly fit in there, and you're going to have oil in this, so you're going to have to play with it to get the air out of the hole so this pin seat all the way down. Now if you want to know how to put this gasket back, because it could go like that, and you see that's not proper because you have imperfection alignment that way, so it will go this way. Now when you're going to be taking this apart, get a camera, take pictures and videos like I'm doing here so you could remember how it goes back. But you could look right here and you will see the marking of the gasket showing its perfect position, and then when you look, you see you have perfect openings for the hole. Now this will have to go something like this. But before you do that, you have to take a careful inspection in here. We have a bushing in here that rides on the rear of the shaft. So if this bushing is damaged, it's going to prevent the shaft from operating in a perfect center. If that should happen, it will most likely damage these vanes because the shaft is going to walk back and forth, which also could lead to noise from the power steering. Most of the time, you will not experience that as long as you have oil inside the power steering system. If the power steering system is to lose the oil and the pump is to operate, you will see catastrophic damage on these vanes in relation to its housing. So that is what I want to show you, the cause for creating a whining noise, a grinding noise when driving the vehicle. When you step on the accelerator, you will hear the noise announcing itself. As you step off the accelerator, the noise goes away. The noise will lead you to believe it's a rear end differential noise. Now, if you have a front wheel drive vehicle, you're going to tend to think it's the differential in the front wheel drive vehicle transmission, the front wheel drive transmission. So you want to take careful inspection and make sure cleanliness is important when assembling this unit back together. You also want to make sure you use some form of lubricant when assembling this power steering pump, and making sure that the rubber portion of this gasket has some cushion to it when you're going to be placing this back cover on. When you tighten the bolt, you want to make sure that you get a cushion, like it could compress against its mating surface. Also, if you have an oil leak on the power steering line where it goes in here and where it returns to the reservoir, along the rack and pinion or the steering gearbox, it will also cause a noise in the power steering pump, because what will happen is air will enter the hydraulic system, and that air will cavitate in here inside the pump, whipping the oil, make it into a foam. You will see that in the oil reservoir. When you open the cap for the reservoir, you will see there's a lot of air bubbles in there. That is a sign to make you think or know that there's air leaking in somewhere along the plumbing of the hydraulic power steering system. So that will need to get addressed first. You must not have any leak, no leak on the plumbing system. Any leak in the plumbing system will cause the pump to cavitate and announce a noise, winding, grinding. This front plate, there is no specific way for placing it. As long as you align the two cavities on the side, everything should be okay. But what's important is, like I said, you will need to replace that oil ring, that inner oil ring that seats here, and it will mate itself against here. The outer oil ring will mate itself on the inside here of the housing and against the plate on the outside here. The most important part in replacing the O-ring, which will be difficult to find because the rebuilders don't want you to get those parts or they will not be able to sell the pump, is that you want to make sure those rubber oil ring are oil resistance, because if they're not oil resistance, the oil ring is going to come apart and it's going to become damaged inside the pump, end up inside of the plumbing, and it will cause more problems and create more work for you to solve and repair the problem. So this brings us to the end of the video on how to eliminate noise from your power steering system by addressing the pump, rebuilding the pump, cleaning it out, putting new fluid. And like I said before, it's always good to put an oil cooler on the power steering system. That oil cooler you will want to place on the low pressure line, not on the line that comes out of here, which will be a high pressure line. You want to place that oil cooler on the line that's returning the oil to the power steering reservoir. Thank you for watching the video. See you again. Have a great day.